All right, welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Mitch English. It is a brand new day for country music artist Jessica Willis Fisher. Her album is climbing the charts, all thanks to songs like this.
History is written at the hands of those who win. The battle must be over for the writing to begin. Take a piece of paper and open up a flame.
Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, singer-songwriter Jessica Willis Fisher joining us. How are you, Jessica?
Good morning. You're right. It is a brand new day. I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Amazing voice you have. How long have you been doing music?
Yeah. Well, I got into music when I was quite little. There was always music in my house. And when I was around 8 or 9 years old, I started playing piano and fiddle and eventually guitar and a few other things. But I'm actually the kid in my family who probably plays the least amount of instruments.
Oh, is that right? So music was something that was just, there around you all the time, and it kind of just evaporated itself into it? Or did you a lot of peer pressure from your siblings?
All of the above, probably. I was really drawn to writing, I think, at a very young age. I'm still making sense of it. Music is a beautiful thing in my life. And I learned quite early classical music, folk music, music that had been around hundreds of years. And I think somehow in my little psyche, the idea that people weren't here, but what they made had outlasted them. There was something that even as a kid, I think I was drawn to that.
Oh, I like that. That is interesting. That's something actually I have even really thought about, but it does say there's something special. There's really something special about this album too. All the songs, it talks about a history that you actually want to be told. Tell us about the motivation about your album.
Yeah, so my story in a nutshell is that I grew up in this large family. We did music. There were a couple of years that we were known as this family band. I'm the oldest of 12. We did dance, we sang,
12.
all of these things. Yeah, so there were a lot of beautiful things about that. And when we were on our television show and our appearances and our tour, a lot of people thought it was a wonderful, beautiful thing. But there were a lot of hidden things under the surface.
Yeah.
And for me, from as early as I could remember, my father was abusive. And so there was this double life, kind of smiling and performing to survive and to make people happy, but then also trying to make sense of this huge clash that only got worse over years and years. And it ended up with me being in my early 20s. I was about to turn 24 and it was getting very violent, and I couldn't live with that contradiction anymore and that lack of safety, and got out of that situation. My dad has seen justice. He is no longer in the picture. And this past year, I was reclaiming music for myself. It had gotten tangled up in a lot of dark things, but I think music is so healing, and it's a great vehicle for speaking the truth. And so I've lived every word on this album, and it was extremely healing for me to put out.
I love that. You know, and you mentioned that you write not only songs, but also your book, Unspeakable, Surviving a Childhood, Finding Your Voice. And what you just spoke about, I imagine that's what comes out inside the book. My curiosity here, where are you in the family? What number are you out of 12?
I'm the oldest.
Okay. All right. Which that took on, I imagine, a lot of responsibility as well, right? Because I'm sure you took care of your siblings.
You know, I wish I would have done a better job of that. I actually felt pretty responsible towards my mom, I think, pretty early on. And you mentioned my book. That was the other thing I put out this year. It was a huge year. I turned 30. I put out my first solo record, and I put out my memoir. And of course, the music is so authentic to me and vulnerable and powerful, but the book is the fuller story of those secrets, right? So everybody knew some version of the story, but this is the part that was not getting talked about, hence the title Unspeakable. And it took a lot of support, a lot of therapy to get to the point where I was able to just admit to myself and then do this work of making sense of my story. But I really do think there's a deeper opportunity for meaning and hopeful change when we share our stories like this. And I share early in the book just realizing the first time I realized something was off wasn't necessarily what was happening to me, but it was just noticing that, my mom was also going through a lot. And as a kid, that bothered me, and I wanted to protect her. And that's just one thread of many that goes on for 20 years, but it's part of the story.
Do you feel that, they say the great songs that come out have a lot of pain behind them, but it's very therapeutic, I imagine, as well. And you kind of briefly spoke about that. How important is it to get that out? And you share that with other survivors. Should they follow that track? Or maybe, not writing a book or whatever, but at least talking about it. Is that what you want to achieve?
Well, I think it's really hard. Let's be honest, it's a complex topic. Abuse of any kind,
Sure.
and not every kind, was a part of my story. It's really hard to give consistently good evidence. I think in general, reaching out for professional help and speaking up are the right things. But sometimes, many times, it gets worse before it gets better. And as I share in my book, steps towards freedom usually made things more dangerous for me. And so it's a bit of a catch-22. It's delicate. Survivors need all the support. There's so much work to do. I could talk about that all day. But I do think that art and any tool that you can find to connect, to express, to heal your wounds and like your inner child and face all the parts of your story, even the darkest, most broken parts, that I have found to be the most powerful thing. And, my book and my album are just some of the ways that I'm doing that. But what's great is if you like writing, if you like reading, if you have access to, everyone has a voice, whether you have access to instruments, those can be really actual verified types of therapy to do things.
Jessica, you have a great story. You're in Orlando. We want you to stop by the studio. But if you at home want to find out more about this great album, songs, as well as herself, JessicaWillisFisher.com. We'll have this link on our website. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.